Thanks, everybody. Great to be here. And I'm so glad to get the chance to join this. And it's wonderful to be here. So let's get started. My talk is going to be talking about cross-cultural design and creativity. Oh, there's a bit of problem with the computer. I'm joking, obviously. So as you probably know, to arrow is human. Technology, we have a lot of times things are going out of order. And there is this one arrow page that on the internet that you also probably know very well, that is the Twitter fail whale. So every time when Twitter was down back in the days, especially in the early days between 2008 to 2013, people see this whale. And the great thing about this illustration is that firstly, I designed the original artwork, but secondly, it was also an honor for me to tell you how art integrate with technology can create something truly amazing and innovative. So as you can see, this is global audience from around the world, inspired by the artwork, and they come up with their own creation, from sculptures to fine artworks to street art in New York City. And also, this is a real Lego spaceship designer that actually beyond TV Scope from Denmark. He made this, and we made it open source for kids to actually build their own whale as well. And Singapore government also licensed the artwork for their public transit poster. And we also have cakes around the world, from Melbourne to Los Angeles to Brazil. We also have a East Coast professor in Rochester did a Fair Whale Pale Ale beer label contest. I was one of the judges. This is back in 2008 and 9. And it was also my honor to move to actually came over to New York City, also the US for the first time. This is back in 2009 for the Shorty Awards. And they were serving Fair Whale Martini at the event. I had 7. I was smashed. There's also the Fair Whale fashion trends in the world. These are all DIY stuff from the fans around the world. Again, also hats for the Halloweens. On the very right is actually an engineer from Adobe. Somebody love it so much. A guy whose name is Critter from Florida actually tattooed it on the leg and made it into CNN News. And one of my favorite thing is I also get the chance to be commissioned by one of my favorite comedians in the world, Conan O'Brien, to create his own 404 page for his Team Coco website. And I got a chance to meet him in person. And you can see the family on my left, actually friends that I've met in San Francisco, and they became my family when I came over visit 11 years ago. And since then, we still keep in touch, and just like my remote family, even though I'm not born and raised in San Francisco, I'm currently in San Francisco, and it feels like home. But not only for my personal sort of experience, it was exciting, and also very grateful to receive all these wonderful positive things. This illustration, or this combination of art and tech, also changed the trajectory of technology company, how they look at the way they interact with their product. A lot of tech companies started to integrate the art pieces into the tech interface to humanize the user experience, also increase the user retention. So hello, everybody. My name is Yiying Lu. Yi means happy, Ying means creative, and my last name Lu means land. So it's Happy Creative Land. I was born and raised in Shanghai, China, and I was educated in Sydney, Australia, and London, UK. And that's the reason why I have this accent. I call this the Yi-English. I'm currently based in San Francisco. I moved here 5 years ago. I started my design studio back in 2008, and I've been working with global companies around the world. But most importantly for me, it is also, I feel like I'm an ambassador of creativity and cross-cultural design. This is the reason why I'm very passionate about traveling around the world in different conferences and also education sectors to teach, and also advocating for cross-cultural design and innovation. So one of the key points here that I would like to have you take away is, if you look at the word function, a lot of times we really care about the function of anything, especially if you're working on a product. You gotta make sure whatever you do is functional, right? But if you look at the word function, the one thing that a lot of people probably don't know is if you look at the first three letters, they actually have fun. So what's fun? Fun is something that actually can trigger emotion. It's the enjoyment, it's the amusement, it's the lighthearted pleasure that you can get of whatever you do. And what I'm here to advocate for is it is important for us to focus on the function, but it's equally important for us to also looking to highlight the fun out of function, because we are living beings. We can only be able to be more productive and more creative if we're in a positive state of mind. So the first bridge I would like to introduce to you is to bridging the gap between function and fun. And if you look at the traditional arrow page, the reason why it doesn't really have a lot of attraction and it doesn't make people feel better is because it's functional, but it's not necessarily fun. It doesn't really trigger an emotion. It's not very humane. However, if you look at this Twitter, the Twitter arrow page, the reason why it got so many global traction was because it was a combination of the function plus emotion, which is in this case fun. And it was also using the color and the shape, which transcend the linguistic barrier. You can have all the English language, but it doesn't necessarily will engage with a global audience, because a lot of them, the users probably don't speak English as the first language. And this is probably the reason why that it also was able to engage with global audiences around the world. So the first takeaway is, any creative work, whether it's a brand or product that combines the functionality and fun, this way you will be able to let your product stand out of the crowd. The second thing I'd like to introduce to you is this example I did to bridge the gap between the East and West. It's a project I did for Disney Shanghai back around 2015 and 16. So this is Disney Shanghai right now. They opened in 2016, and before they opened, they were still in the construction period. This is back in 2015. They reached out to me and they said, we're still building the theme park. And there's a very important thing we're doing, which is recruiting, because any company needs to have the best talent to work for the hardware. People are like the software. So we wanted to recruit some of the best people in China. And we also already figure out the 5 characters that we are going to highlight here. Mickey stands for magic, Simba stands for growth, Mulan stands for courage, and Elsa stands for dream. Finally, Snow White and 7 Dwarfs stands for female leadership. I'm joking. It stands for teamwork. So if you look at the 5 characters that they have chosen here, the problem is it is wonderful. It's very Disney, but they are very diverse. And Disney gave me this very interesting challenge, which is they want me to produce this campaign to fit into this slogan, authentically Disney and distinctly Chinese. But if you look at the 5 characters that they choose, they're not the same gender. They're not even the same species. So how can I figure out a unified way that makes sure that it's still authentically Disney and authentically to reflect their personality, but it also speaks distinctly to the Chinese audiences? So I was looking at the visual device that might be able to carry the story, which I turned to the folk art style in China, which is paper cut. And paper cut is a very culturally respected art form in China, and also in a lot of Asian countries. So at the time, I decided to use this as a vehicle to tell the story visually. I asked the team and they all liked the idea. So I started to draft the Mickey. We have this signature Mickey pose, and I was integrating paper cut Lucky Clouds, and also paper cut style of the tiger shoe, which is a very lovely tradition in ancient China. This is a tradition that has been passed on to the younger generation, which is when the baby was born, they are wearing these tiger shoes to protect them. So the tiger are like protective animals. But the modern lifestyle these days, people tend to forget. So I want to kind of carry on this tradition. And the team really liked the idea. So I integrated the tiger shoe into the Mickey as well. And we also make it red because it's a very lucky color in Asia. So Mickey was, the final presentation of Mickey was this. Simba was also very challenging because the first draft, when I sent it to them, is looked like this. It's the adult Simba. And then everybody was like, well, he looks a little bit depressed. And how can you make him like a more positive? And also, we also really would love to symbolize this growth of Simba. And we already decided to have the slogan that in the Disneyland, the little ones can become a big hero. So we want to have the artwork also reflect the story. So I would love to have you to integrate the little Simba into the adult Simba. But I said, if you look at this, when you put the little Simba and the adult Simba on the same page, the adult Simba become Mufasa, right? And the team was like, we trust you. We'll be able to find a solution. So I went back and I watched the animation again. And I was able to find that in the animation, there's actually this little scene of Simba as an animation character, right? So I ended up having that integrating into the adult Simba as a tattoo, and the team really liked the idea. But in the meantime, the team said we would love to have more color schemes from Africa because this story happens in Africa. So we wanted to have, color representation of African totems. So I ended up integrating Simba with the African totems and with the African totems in the background and the foreground. Mulan was also an interesting challenge as well because the first draft looks like this. And I sent it to the team and they said, oh, it's great, but it's a little bit too feminine. Is there a way that you can actually make her just like a combination of feminine energy and masculine energy? So I decided to look into the Western sort of reference, which I found that we can do it poster. And integrating that pose in, it's like the power pose with Mulan, and all of a sudden this energy level changed. I was also looking at the name of Mulan. In Chinese, actually, it means the magnolia flower, but a lot of non-Chinese speakers actually had no idea Mulan actually means magnolia flower. So I do wanted to figure out a way to integrate the magnolia flower into the artwork. So I have the foreground and background with the magnolia flower, which reflects the strength of Mulan and also what her name means. Elsa was another challenge here. As you can see, there is nothing Chinese at all with Elsa, right? So how can we make Elsa not only representing Elsa as Elsa, but also make her integrating into the Chinese audience and having a Chinese flair on it? So I decided to choose this power pose that everybody is familiar with, kind of like a Kung Fu sort of power pose, and also integrating with the paper cut style into her hair and her dress. And all of a sudden, it does started to have this very Chinese feel to it. And this is the background and foreground integrating with the snowflake, and this is Elsa. Snow White and Seven Dwarf also was challenging because we have to have the entire team, not just the CEO, to be in the picture. So the original drawing, the sketch, they said, we don't want hierarchies. So I want to make sure that it's having the seven dwarfs to be surrounding the Snow White and also integrating with the forest theme onto her dress and have the dwarf circling around just like a circular team. So this is Snow White. And so in the end, this is how it looks during the actual campaign, online and offline, at the subway, at the actual interview place with all the candidates. This is outdoor, and this is lovely team with this in the background. So this is Disney Shanghai, and this campaign was successfully recruited 80,000 people around in China, and they were able to also had a lot of really wonderful talent join the team. So this is Disney Shanghai. And what I would like to have you take away is the target market local customs should be recognized, respected, and infused into the design. And we need to integrate the history and culture into the creative campaign to form a better business and cultural value. The next one I'd like to also introduce you to is the China-Australia Millennial Project. It's an interesting project that was bicultural and bilingual incubator for young Chinese and Australian entrepreneurs. So it happens in Sydney, Australia for a offline 5 days after they have 3 month virtual incubator program online. And people will be able to meet up in Sydney and they will be able to climb the Sydney Harbour Bridge together. But before that, they will be allocated into 15 different thinking tanks. So the branding challenge here before they started is that they needed to have a brand that representing the bicultural bilingual incubator because they are having all these people from 2 different countries, but also not only having the duality of these 2 countries and 2 culture, but also representing the growth because it is an incubator. Finally, it needed to also representing the multidisciplinary aspects of this because it's 15 thinking tanks, and with all these different thinking tanks, I need to figure out a way to represent the diversity of it. So I thought about what's the best way to representing all these aspects is the tangrams. Tangrams is actually the Chinese board of 7 boards of skills. It's a puzzle that consists of 7 flat shapes that can make it into a square, but it also can create hundreds or probably thousands of different combinations. And so in this case, it meets the multidisciplinary aspect, which in this case, the 15 thinking tanks can be reinterpreted from the combination of tangrams. Also, I was making my own caterpillar, cocoon, and butterfly tangrams to indicate the notion of growth. And finally, it also can become a butterfly in 2 different colors to represent the duality. The challenge here is that even though a lot of people can read this as a butterfly, and some people said that it is pretty nice to have 2 colors for 2 countries, but we can't really, it will be better to have some sort of antenna to indicate that's a butterfly. It's easier for us to kind of recognize this as a butterfly. And as I was talking to the CEO, we realized that in Chinese character of people, because it is 2 different kinds of people meeting, right? In Chinese character, people actually looks like upside down antenna. And because they are climbing the bridge together, and also one country is in the southern hemisphere and the other country is in the northern hemisphere, we decided to flip the character of Chinese character people, have it upside down. It's like 2 people meeting or 2 culture like at the meeting point. And so this is the final design of the China-Australia Millennial Project. It also makes it easy for people to visually read this as a butterfly. And it's also meaningful. It serves a function, but also serves the notion of closure as well. So this is the final character or design, branding design for China-Australia Millennial Project. And this is also how the branding is in action at the Town Hall in Sydney, Australia for their initial gala. This is their inaugural gala with all the winners and all the participants from around the world. This is their website. And as you can see, the colors of the blue and the red, the duality all being reflected. This is the Town Hall flag. That's the assets of the website. So this is China-Australia Millennial Project. The next one I'd like to show you quickly is the tech and art integration, which is another gap I'd like to bridge. In this case, you probably have used these emojis on your phone. Dumpling, takeout box, chopsticks, and fortune cookie. I actually designed the original Unicode version, which inspired Apple and Google to come up with their own afterwards. So the story is following. You get the chance to have the inside peek of how this happened. So in 2015, when I just moved to San Francisco Bay Area, my good friend Jenny A. Lee, who was also another American Chinese, she was born and raised in New York, and we met 10 years ago in New York, and she invited me to come to her place to have dumplings. And I realized there is no dumpling emoji, and I said, "Oh, how can there be no dumpling emoji?" She said, "Oh, good point." I'm like, this conversation is not going anywhere. But then I went back. I realized that I am a designer. I have design responsibility, and I have imagination, right? So I might be able to make this happen. So I went back to my table and I created the very first dumpling emoji, the very kind of even before the beta. This is the alpha version. I call this the bling bling dumpling because it blings. And then we quickly realized that dumpling is actually very universal. Georgia has khinkali, Japan has gyoza, Italy have ravioli, mandu, pierogi. And this is ravioli from Italy, pierogi, empanadas, pelmeni. All these emojis are from around the world. Kreplech, right? Uh, pot stickers and momos and mentis and Maltashan. So every country has its own version of dumpling. We need a dumpling emoji. So we started this very serious organization. It's actually all volunteer based called the Emoji Nation. And we did a Kickstarter campaign to get people's votes and attention to be able to push the dumpling emoji to the world. And in the same time, the nonprofit organization, which actually controls the publish of our all the characters on our keyboard, is this amazing nonprofit called Unicode. They saw our campaign and they reached out and they said to me, Yiying, we love your idea and we love all the effort you and the whole Emoji Nation team has put on. And we thought that if you look at the original dumpling design you had, most of the food emoji doesn't have face on it, right? Except, I said, except the French fries that actually has a face on it. But they said, we would love to have you remove the face, but also make it 45 degree because most of the recent food emojis are 45 degrees. And I said, why? Maybe that tastes better. So I had more dumplings and I made it 45 degree and it submitted. And in the meantime, the Unicode also mentioned to me that we also have a lot of requests. People actually want to have takeout box and chopstick and fortune cookie. So at that time, I realized that's definitely not my job. It's not my career. I did all these as a passion project. It is certainly become a calling. So I ended up designing all these emojis and I submitted with all my friends. And at the time, this is early 2016, I went to UTC, which is Unicode Technical Committee meeting with my friends. And at the time, I also had Alolita, who is also a good friend of mine, tweeted about the process. And in the meantime, which is really amazing because all these Unicode consortium members can chime in online in real time and give feedbacks. So Bobby, who is a linguistic expert from Taiwan, tweeted to me in real time and said that the figure cross chopsticks actually is impolite in China and Japan to the elders. And I was looking at it, I was like, oh my God, I was born and raised in China. I was growing up in China, but I had no idea. It is kind of true. I started to do more research and realized that it indeed in Japan and China and Korea, there's etiquette that cross chopsticks actually does means impolite. And the reason why that I don't know is for the younger generation, if the elder generation, if they don't tell them, or just like we simplify things, right? Like language, we used to say spectacular and marvelous, and now we just say awesome. So it's the same thing. If we are not keep using these older tradition, or if we are not sort of keep the tradition, sometimes it will goes away. And I thought that was actually a very legitimate ask. So to avoid any confusion, or to make sure that people are feeling good when they look at the chopstick, I decided to uncross the chopstick after doing a lot of research and validating that it is a very legitimate request. And so in the end, I submitted the design, and in 2017 autumn, they finally came to your keyboard. So now that you have these 4 emojis in your keyboard, we also I also designed the Peacock Emoji, which was released in, I think was 2018. And in 2020, I think Q4 this year, the boba emoji, which is the pearl milk tea emoji or bubble tea emoji, will be also available on your phone. This is a sneak peek of the design. I'm not going to give you the final design, so just want to keep it there. So here, what I'm very interested in is also being the bridge between the tech and art, which translate a relatively new and unfamiliar computer language into approachable visual language with which people can understand and appreciate. The last two examples I'd like to show you is the content and the form. So when I was working at 500 Startups, which is a VC firm back in 2015 and 17, I was working on this project of when they expanded to India. So when 500 expanded to India, they needed to have a Indian local logo. For the 500 global logo, it looks like this, but in Hindi, it actually looks like a 400. So obviously, we cannot use the Hindi for the 500 logo because it looks like like $100 shot. It's like if you speak local language, you might get $100 discount. Obviously, we cannot use that. So then I spelled out the word 500, and the Hindi character looks okay. But my team in India quickly told me that there's challenge number 2. There are about 122 languages in India, and Hindi is just one of the 20 plus official languages spoken in India. Not everybody in the country speaks Hindi. So I decided to do more research and having all these official language being laid out. And the next thing I did is looking at the original 500 logo and integrate the official language around the square and integrate with the color of the India flag. And that's how I made the localized 500 logo, which solved the problem with the multiple language issue. The next quick one is also another really interesting challenge, which is at the time in Korea, when 500 expanded to Korea, we had a conference to celebrate women entrepreneurs in Seoul, Korea. And at the time, Google was one of the sponsors because the event happens in Google campus. And 500 is also another sponsor. And so the organizers wanted to have a logo that meets all the requirements, which is in this case, 500 and Google's logo need to be represented there. And it also needed to reflect the notion of female, and also it needed to reflect the notion of Korea. So I was looking at the character of female and Korean character of female, Yosing. It does not have anything in common. However, I started to look at the character of 500 and Yosing, which the Korean character means female. They have something in common. It's the two circles. So I thought, what about having the integration of the two circles and highlighting the rest of the characters in colorful, the colorful shapes kind of reflect the Google logo as well. So this is how I came up with the solution. It's a very simple solution of a pretty complex problem, which in this case is 500 for female in Google Campus. This is how the event logo looks like for the campaign with all the female founders. And so the last two example I'd like to show you is the bridge between the business and the culture. So when I started the project of Go Sushi, this is an Australian brand in Australia, and it wasn't doing very well. It was about to bankrupt. And they came to me at the time and said, hey, we would love to figure out a way to work with you to come up with a new branding. So I came up with the entire new branding called the Wasabi Warrior. We changed the name completely. And we also, I also created the original characters. But I also wanted to integrate the content with the character and come up with a powerful story that tells people about the content or the ingredient of the sushi. So in this case, we have all these different characters that representing different fillings of sushi, from Ocean Warrior, which is seafood, pork, beef, vegetable, and chicken. So this is the shop design with it integrating with all the characters. And they did very well. They opened in Hong Kong afterwards, and they had 50 shops in Australia. And also they reopened their shop later on they newly opened their shop later on in the Philippines. This is a very successful example to show that even the content is the same, but when you change the appearance or change the visual storytelling, it could be very powerful, and it can create a lot of business value. And finally, I'd like to show you example from Visually, which is a tech startup back in 2011 to 2014. They're one of the most celebrated visual graphic sort of content platform for infographics. So in 2014, they decided to become a content platform. And so when they decided that pivot, they needed to attract more investors and also more designers around the world. And they wanted to go to South by Southwest to do this campaign. And their competitors next to them, actually, like big company like NASA or New York Times. And so how do you stand out of the crowd, even though you're a small startup? So this is their original logo. And at the time, the CEOs and the CMO were from different countries. We were doing this meeting in Skype, and they said, we don't want to lose the original logo, but we wanted to somehow integrate this new slogan called "Content is King" into the new campaign. And I thought, if the content is king, why don't we just make it into a content king? So I ended up integrating the logo into this new character that I designed, which also has the main colors of the branding color from the prism, the pink and the blue with Content King. And this is the actual mascot. And we have this character being integrated into posters, and we bring him around in town. We also have him as a little prop for the photo booth, which is really fun. This is the team integrating with the photo booth. This is before Snapchat, guys. This is actually OG sort of design. I think this is like an offline sticker idea, and a lot of people had a lot of fun. But in the meantime, they also willing to share their information with the team because there is a genuine engagement here. The team also had a lot of fun. People also were more willing to ask the team questions. We also made them into stickers and bags. Our bag is twice as big as the main conference bag. So that's a really good hack because everybody decided to put their bag into our bag, which is a huge hit. We also took the king to the 6th Street for parties, and people started to take photo of him, and he became a little bit viral during the actual event. And we kind of see him everywhere, from Nevada to Austin. And after that, the team was successfully raising $3 million, and they were successfully being acquired afterwards. So the word "content is king" is actually being popularized by Bill Gates in 1996. And now it's 2020, right? And I would like to propose, if content is king, engagement is queen. And if we have really wonderful function, but also have highlighting the fun out of function, if we have really great business value, we also need to bring in the culture value. Really wonderful tech also needed to work with wonderful art. And also, I am the bridge between the East and West. And I think that this is also the reason why I'm doing all these, and the reason why I'm moving to San Francisco. And literally in San Francisco, I'm using the Golden Gate Bridge to invite you all to bridge the gaps between things that are seemingly opposite. Innovation is really coming from learning to unify the seemingly opposite sides with the function of respecting and understanding both sides. This way, we can truly integrate new business and cultural value. And these values are the key to our future. And finally, I want to kind of leave you a little kind of personal mission, which in this case, I made this San Francisco bridge. And last year, I was doing the event at Apple Union Square to really invite people to co-create. This is something we are going to do later on for my emoji challenge session. So I want to give you a little quick sneak peek for 1 minute. So at the time at the Apple Store, everybody was given an iPad and they can draw. So I created this black and white template, and people were able to, I demo how to use Adobe Fresco to put in the color, whether it's watercolor or color pencil or acrylic. You can use the app to create your own design. And it's amazing to see little kids from like 6-year-old Race draw his very first graphic by using the iPad with the instruction. He's so happy. And also seeing people, this is actual employees from Adobe team, wonderful Adobe team, create their own artwork using Fresco This is actually from a Russian girl who lives in San Francisco, who misses the family, and she put the babushka on the top, or matroshka. And also people who do this for the very first time, they never draw or they never use watercolor, but they were able to create their own art. My favorite comment is from this lady, Claire. She said that you don't have to be an artist to enjoy drawing and be creative. Creativity is for everyone. So I strongly recommend you to come to session later on. This is also my little gem with the Adobe, with the Apple Genius. We created our own characters. I did the background, he did the foreground. We also have pros, didn't follow the rules, and they can come up with their own design, which is very welcome. So we'll leave you with the bridges. San Francisco, Sydney, which is another wonderful city. I've lived for 13 years, and London, which I loved very dearly. I received education there too. And in some way, I realized that I love drawing bridges because we are all bridges here. So thank you for listening. And this is my contact information. Feel free to ping me on different social medias or join my session later on. Thank you.